whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they've climbed the greasy pole. They want to be famous, they want to be influential, they want to be powerful. Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it.
That her brand was in great trouble. American Riviera Orchard, that she had allegedly nicked. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt, she targeted Harry.
You just can't keep faking it. It's too hard.
Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Right.
The Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. Well, I do think the Sussex Overdrive is unbelievable. But, I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And, of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
She will take her royal kids, who can still go by Prince and Princess, and find the billionaire.
Prince Harry will not make Meghan Markle a billionaire. She wants to be a billionaire. So who will? A new man. At some point, if it's offered up, it might happen. That is why she is constantly meeting new billionaires.
And that was very critical because at that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to firstly be seen with Harry, and secondly didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap.
Harry, being a simple soul, has easily changed to suit Meghan's agenda. They want to hide their secrets, and I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us to know. And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite. That she arrived in London, full career, single girl, wasn't interested. Of course, she'd been coming to London since 2013, hunting for a man to marry. She wanted an Englishman. She was on a man hunt.
You know how Meghan Markle always painted her life like a glossy fairy tale. The misunderstood Duchess, the brave survivor of royal cruelty, the woman the world never truly appreciated. Well, Tom Bower just took that fairy tale and tore it to shreds. He's not the kind of man who whispers secrets. He drops bombs. His books make billionaires sweat and PR teams lose sleep, and this time, his target was Meghan's carefully curated image. For years, she made people believe she'd weathered emotional storms no one else could survive, but Bower stepped in like a man holding a stack of receipts after a bad breakup and said, "Wait, none of this adds up." He didn't murmur it. He said it like a man auditing a fantasy.
And I think the most interesting story is the Reitman story. Reitman's is like a Marks and Spencer's in Canada.
Her whole story, that perfect, sad yet strong narrative, started to crumble. The inspirational soundtrack went silent. Bower didn't just question her. He dissected her myth. He walked in with a smirk that said, "I'm here for facts, not feelings." And suddenly, that picture-perfect image Meghan used to float on collapsed like wet cardboard.
Revenge, you talk about how Meghan's lack of knowledge about British history meant she could not understand that Diana had won the public's affection.
She was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice. For two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted. And secondly, I don't believe she ever intended to stay. She always intended to take the title, take the connections and get back to California.
Because when Tom Bower enters the conversation, you're not dealing with gossip. You're dealing with a professional reputation destroyer. He doesn't use rumor. He uses interviews, evidence, and brutal honesty. Meghan barely had time to fix the lighting on her Duchess persona before he announced the unraveling had begun. Her story, he said, wasn't just bending reality, it was redecorating it.
Meghan's agenda and Meghan's living with Meghan is very different than living with Kate and William. Meghan has a completely different attitude, and I think California has a different attitude. So I think we're now seeing a different Harry, and to his misfortune, is not a Harry that appeals to the same sort of people in the same numbers as previously.
And when he started revealing what he'd found, her mask slipped so fast it practically hit the floor. According to Bower, Meghan didn't just tell her truth. She remodeled it like a renovation project. Each memory was redesigned, each timeline refurbished. He built the picture with the cold focus of a man assembling IKEA furniture. Precise, unforgiving, and emotionally detached.
Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was chaired as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty. I think there was that, but I've got to tell you, my research for my new book, that the number of times she was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice. For two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted.
Bauer says Meghan's brand was never built on reality. It was constructed on whatever storyline positioned her best. The wounded phoenix rising from a monarchy that just didn't get her. Every public appearance, every quote, every tear, it was all curated. She rewrote timelines, cropped people out of her life like unwanted background objects, and filtered her memories until they were profitable. He said she didn't just blur the truth, she photoshopped it into something marketable.
Meghan's very commercial. She doesn't want to be poor. And then having got all that, she then saw how she needed a consort, a husband who's going to take her to the next stage. And she was on a manhunt, there's no doubt. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being on a manhunt. There are women hunts too, but I mean, she was...
Her go-to theme? Royal injustice? Emotional scars? The world that just didn't appreciate her. It was dramatic enough to make a soap opera writer blush, and Bauer cut right to the heart of it. The public's love for Meghan wasn't love for her. It was fascination with her royal status. People clapped because she wore the crown's glow, not because they knew her soul. But she mistook that applause for personal worship. And that, he says, was the beginning of the downfall, because when the sympathy stopped selling and the inconsistencies started showing, everything she'd built began to crumble. Tom Bauer isn't someone you brush off. He's the man powerful people dread hearing from. He's spent decades digging into politicians, tycoons, royals, people who'd rather vanish than be in his crosshairs. He thrives on uncovering hypocrisy and peeling away the polished PR masks. And Meghan, the queen of legal threats, the Duchess of defamation suits, somehow she never sued Bauer. Not once. And that silence spoke volumes. Bauer said it himself. He doesn't deal in rumors. He deals in proof. He tracks down the voices they thought were buried. He builds timelines with the precision of a prosecutor. And in those receipts, he found what her critics had whispered all along. Meghan's fame wasn't accidental. It was strategic. He even called her relationship with Harry a manhunt, driven not by romance, but ambition. Harsh, maybe. But Bauer insisted it wasn't criminal, just calculated. He went further, saying that's exactly why her world began to crack. Because strategies built on illusions don't survive under evidence. And then came his biggest revelation, the one that made the world gasp. According to Bauer, Harry and Meghan had already bought the Lilibet domain name, the Queen's private childhood nickname, before they even told the Queen about their daughter's birth. Not as a sweet tribute, not as a family honor, as a branding opportunity. Cold, deliberate, profitable. He called it one of the lowest, most calculated moves of their career. And the mess that followed? Historic. Harry claimed he'd asked for the Queen's blessing. The palace, which never publicly contradicts royals, quietly told the BBC, no, that's not true. That denial hit like a thunderclap. For a palace that avoids conflict like the plague, it was a public slap. Bauer said this wasn't confusion, it was manipulation. And that moment was when their credibility began collapsing in real time. Because when you try to monetize the Queen's private nickname, people start asking, what else have you rewritten? He didn't stop there. Every PR move, every new rebranding effort, American Riviera Orchard, the podcast relaunches, the political flirtations, all of it, Bauer warned, carried the same fatal flaw. The story no longer worked because the world stopped believing it. He ended with an almost chilling prediction. The next chapter of Meghan's life won't be defined by what she says, but by what no one listens to anymore. Because once the audience realizes the performance, the applause dies. And as the video fades, the voiceover teases one last time. Did Tom Bauer expose the truth or the entire act? Because gossip or not, one thing is certain. When a fairy tale shatters this spectacularly, no one can look away. And here's the part that really twists the knife. Because according to Bauer, this wasn't just the fall of Meghan Markle, it was the slow unmasking of an entire illusion she had built brick by brick. Every speech, every podcast, every empowerment slogan, he said it all followed the same script. Meghan as the misunderstood savior, the world as her villain. But when the applause faded, the script no longer worked. Suddenly, her truth began sounding rehearsed, her emotions looked staged, and the once adoring media that crowned her the modern Cinderella started whispering words like contradiction and calculated. Bauer didn't stop at the glamour. He dug into what came after, the Netflix docuseries that was meant to reclaim their story only deepened the cracks. He described it as a PR film dressed as confession. Viewers began to notice the selective tears, the recycled anecdotes, the editing cuts that always painted Meghan as the shining heroine and everyone else as cold or cruel. Even Hollywood, the one place she thought would worship her unconditionally, started stepping back. Studios didn't want want the noise, producers didn't want the lawsuits, and investors didn't want the baggage. And as Bauer summed up, Meghan's tragedy isn't that people turned against her, it's that they finally saw her clearly. She built an empire out of sympathy, but once that sympathy dried up, there was nothing left to hold up the story. Because you can only sell your truth for so long before people start asking for proof. Now the cameras are quieter, the headlines gentler, but the fascination remains. Because, as Bauer's revelations echo across tabloids and talk shows, one question still lingers like perfume in an empty room. Was Meghan ever telling her story, or just performing it?